The experience of owning an Aventador and driving it is very unique. I've owned a few cars, few supercars in the past, but I would say that the Aventador, the way the engine is, the way the dynamics are, the way the mechanics are, truly can be called the king of the supercars. Now I know that there are cars which are hypercars and which are more exotic than an Aventador, but the sheer road presence of an Aventador, the sound of the engine and the noise it makes, obviously, and the whole experience of from starting it to reversing it to raising it, getting it out of the garage and then taking it out is just a whole sort of a theater and a drama around it. And you have to really plan it in advance. You just can't say, oh, today I'm going to take the Aventador out. When I know I want to take this car out, I have to at least think about it at least the night before, so then I know, because in my garage is such that I have to move a few cars here and there. And usually I keep the Aventador at the back end of the garage so that it is readily available. This is my second Aventador. Before this, in 2017, I bought a 2011 or 12 Aventador. It was a first-gen Aventador, orange color. It has a Krapovich exhaust and a wing, an aftermarket wing. I'm not a big fan of adding aftermarket things to my cars. I know some people love it, but I like to keep my cars as stock standard as possible. So what I found with the first generation Aventador compared to this Aventador, even though they're both classified as first generation, this came right at the end of the run of the first generation and before the Aventador S, which is the second generation Aventador, came out. So I feel that driving experience of this car is a lot more like what I have heard about Aventador S. I haven't driven Aventador S myself, but I have driven a Aventador SV, and I feel that the gear and the software of Miura Homage is very similar to the second generation Aventadors compared to the first generation Aventadors. The styling is like first generation, but the software and probably the engine and things like that, they're a lot more influenced from the second generation. So that's my experience with the Miura edition Aventador. I was born in Pakistan, and growing up in Pakistan was, back in the 80s, was not too bad. It was a nice, quiet, peaceful country back then. We only used to have one television channel at the time. It was called Pakistan Television. And I remember as a kid, we used to have, in the evenings around 7 or 8 o'clock, American television shows were played, and one of the shows that they used to play was called The Knight Rider. That was my first experience with what I saw, a beautiful car. Around that time, there was another television show called Magnum PI, and in the Magnum PI was the first time I saw a Ferrari in action. Soon after that, there was a third show that they aired in Pakistan, was the Miami Vice. That's when I was old enough to actually appreciate the Ferrari Testarossa, the white Ferrari Testarossa that they had in that show, and it was my favorite show. I used to watch it every week, and that is where the passion for the supercars, I guess, for me started. I guess I left Pakistan was also that one of my dreams was to be able to own these cars, or at least experience them. And I knew that if I stayed in Pakistan, I may not be able to do that, because I come from a middle class family in Pakistan, and we didn't have that sort of a background where we could afford that. I moved to Australia in 2003 as a junior doctor. I came to Alice Springs in the beginning, and I still to this day have a very special place for Alice Springs in my heart. I feel that if someone asks me where I'm from, if I don't say I'm from Pakistan, I would say I'm from Alice Springs, because all my friends, my relationships, my affiliations in Australia first started in Alice Springs. If I have an option, I would go back and retire in Alice Springs. It's just a phenomenal space. It's got a very good energy about it. A lot of Australians, unfortunately, haven't been to Alice Springs. So I would recommend that everyone should visit Alice Springs sometime. The first ever sports car that I ever owned was Porsche Boxster. That was when I was working at Royal Adelaide Hospital. And once you get your first car, I think that sets the stage for you for future cars. I find that a lot of time youngsters ask me, how did you manage to buy these cars? And to be honest, the answer to that question is that you just need to have a passion and a desire to be able to have something. It doesn't need to be a supercar. It can be anything in life. And if you have that passion and desire, the universe then make things happen for you. It is not just a philosophical thing, it's a reality. If you really want something in life, and it doesn't need to be a materialistic thing, it can be anything. You need to have a passion and a desire, and then you have to work towards getting it. So you just cannot have a passion and desire without the action. So the action has to match. I grew up in a town called Rawalpindi, which is near the capital, Islamabad. So we used to have these Sunday markets where they used to have these second-hand books and magazines that were sold. So I used to go there in high school and with my friends, and we used to buy a lot of supercar magazines, second-used supercar magazines. And that's when I got the first exposure to see a Lamborghini. So back then, this is back in the 90s. So the Diablo was the car that Lamborghini had at the time, but the magazines were a few years older. So the magazines that were coming to Pakistan at the time were second-hand magazines, but they were Countaches there. So I remember when I saw a Countach, there was a magazine that had a poster of a Countach in the centerfold, and you open it up. And when I saw that car, I thought that it was a spaceship. So I just fell in love with the styling and the designing, like most people back then did. The first Lamborghini that I ever purchased was back in 2016, and it was the Huracan rear-wheel drive version. A friend of mine had it, and he sold it to me almost brand new. He ordered it and then he sold it to me. When you ended up buying a small baby Lamborghini, then everyone asks you, why don't you buy a bigger Lamborghini? And I am a taller guy, so I found that the Huracan and the Gallardos are a bit smaller for me. So that's why when I had the opportunity and the finances allowed me, I traded that in and I got that Aventador, the orange one that I spoke about. And that was my second Lamborghini. And then I sold that car to get this one a couple of years ago. And so that's how my journey with the Lamborghinis have been. And the last car, a Lamborghini that I owned, was going back again into retro. I bought a Murcielago Roadster, which is again an iconic car. It's one of very few cars that were produced, and the one that I ended up getting through the local Lamborghini dealership was very low mileage, very pristine, one owner car. So I was lucky to be able to have that as well. So at the moment I've got two Lamborghinis in the collection, this Aventador Miura Homage and a Lamborghini Murcielago Roadster. So the opportunity of buying this car came out right after the COVID. I had put a deposit for Huracan Performante, a purple one. And when this one came up, I decided that, okay, I'll move that deposit from that car to this car, because I just thought that this would be a better car for me, given the size that I'm a bigger guy. I've had a Huracan in the past, so I just wanted to experience an Aventador again. Initially, I didn't really like the color scheme, because at the time when I saw it for the first time, I wasn't aware that this color scheme was basically a Miura edition color scheme. So going back, I know a lot of people do know about Lamborghini Miura, but that was the car based upon which this car was created. And it was a 50th anniversary homage to the original Miura. For those who don't know about Miura, Miura was the first V12 mid-rear engine Lamborghini that actually put Lamborghini onto the world stage as a proper supercar manufacturer. And by a lot of people, the Miura is considered as the first supercar that was ever built. When I was buying this car, I was looking at it. I used to go to Barbagallo's almost every second day just to have a look at the car. Then I did a bit of more research looking at the car. I found out after watching a couple of videos and doing some search on internet, I found that Lamborghini gave the project to the Ad Personam department of Lamborghini, and the instructions to them was to create a car which then pays homage to the original Miura. Hence the color scheme of these cars. So there were different color schemes that these original Miuras came out, but the most iconic ones in my opinion were this Verde Scandal green with the gold accents, and there's Verde Scandal green with silver accents as well. Then we've got that different citrus colors in that as well, and then black and whites as well. They only made 50 cars, so a lot less production numbers compared to the original Miura. A lot of people ask me that, oh, this is just an Aventador with a color scheme. And because the engine is the same as the regular Aventador. But it is what it is. Lamborghini wanted to create a homage to the original Miura, and they didn't need to give it extra power or anything else. They just wanted to reflect the same colors, and that's what it is. Over the years, I've become a big fan of this color, and everyone loves this color. I take this car out on different car meets and things like that, and people just love this color. It's a very out there color, but because it's a classic Lamborghini color, it is a color that everyone who admires and appreciates Lamborghinis, they like this color. This color is an original Lamborghini color from the 60s and the 70s. The opportunity to own a part of Lamborghini history in the form of an Aventador Miura edition, I feel very privileged, and I think that it is all to do with, again, what I mentioned earlier on, was to have the passion and the desire, and then working hard towards obtaining or getting your goals that you set for yourself in life. So at the moment I have got a Ferrari 458 Speciale, I've got a Ferrari 458 Italia, I've got a 458 Spider as well, which I'm selling it to make room for another car. Then there's a Lamborghini Murcielago Roadster, which we spoke about. And then I have got a Porsche 997.2 GT3 as well, in a manual in Guards Red, which is one of my favorite cars. One car I forgot to mention is that I have is a BMW M4 DTM edition as well. A lot of car enthusiasts and people who buy cars, they are seeing them as an investment opportunity. And I must say that that is not a very nice trend. Because when you start seeing cars as an investment opportunity, then you don't like to, or you won't want to drive them, because automatically the more you drive them, the more kilometers you put on the car, and then the depreciation on the cars, or the desirability of the cars in collector's market, is not as much as a car that has delivery miles. So we are getting into a situation where these amazing supercars are being built, and they have got the best technology, the best drivability, the best of everything, but they spend all their lives sitting in garages. I personally myself, I try to drive my cars as much as I can. Every weekend I take one car out, go for a drive around Perth with some friends to have a coffee or breakfast. And that's what I like doing. But then I know some of my friends, they just don't like driving their cars at all, because they think that if they put a few kilometers on the car, then when they're selling the car will not get them that much return on an investment. And I think that's the sad thing for the entire car enthusiast world, is that we are now seeing the cars as a commodity and as an investment thing, whereas they should be driven and they should be enjoyed for what they're built for. In my experience of having the opportunity of owning a few cars, I just think that the Aventador is a showstopper kind of a car. So no matter where you are, no matter what color your Aventador is, you take it on the road and it sort of attracts people. I think children appreciate these cars more than adults. So even my daughter, she likes the color of this car more than any other color. Her friends as well, they all just love, they get just gravitated, because the shape and the styling of Lamborghinis is such that they look like rocket ships or spaceships. The whole theater and the drama and the styling is like out there. So when I take this car out, I have to plan the journey in advance. I have to think where I'm going to take it, where I'm going to park it, and where are the speed bumps and not, because this is a car that can also attract a lot of hatred as well, as you know. Unfortunately, there's a tall poppy syndrome in most places, and Perth is also one of those places where you can have people who don't like you driving nicer cars. So those are the goods and bads of Aventador. So to sum it up, it is the king of supercars in my opinion. The road presence of an Aventador, especially in a citrus color or color like this, is just second to none. There's no other car that matches it. Yeah, a lot of my friends have a favorite car brand. So I've got a few friends who would only buy a Ferrari, and then I've got a few friends who would only buy a Porsche. Then some of them only buy a Lamborghini. I tend to belong to that rare group that likes all the brands equally. I have a bit more affinity towards Ferraris just because I have owned more Ferraris over the years. Having said that, I love Ferraris, Porsches, and Lamborghinis equally. And I think it's the diversity, it's the different driving experience, and I think it's the different sort of feeling and emotion that each brand evokes, which is different to the other brand. So once you have got a few supercars, then obviously the natural progression is to be able to own a hypercar one day. The hypercar that I would like to own one day would be a Pagani Zonda. I also like the Pagani Miura as well, but I like the original, and I'm a bit more inclined toward classic cars. So anything I would love to do with this car? Keep it? No. So yeah, no, the thing is that, you know, people say that this is my forever car, or that is my forever car. I also have to be mindful that we are not going to be on this planet forever. So I guess my theory with the cars is that they are not forever cars, but I would like to have some of the cars for as long as I can. And then it would be time for the next custodian to take over. And I hope that these cars go to someone who can really appreciate and admire them and look after them and take care of them the way I did. Having this opportunity to own these supercars is also something that humbles you as well, because if you have a look at it, a lot of people on the planet who dream about these cars are not able to own these cars. And I'm not saying that your dream should be to own materialistic things. I'm not saying that at all. But I do think that in many ways, the pleasure and joy that you get from owning these cars, there are very few things that can match that in that sense. I think that if you can, then it's not a bad hobby or desire to have a supercar, because then to have them, you then have to work hard to be successful in whatever you do in your life. And that's what I believe, that the ability to owning these cars also gives me the ability to help some friends and family back home. So whenever they have an issue or a problem, or they're in a financial strife, I'm always there to help them.